So Severance, those evil people at Severance with their the stupidest ending of an episode ever. All right. So there's some key aspects in that. You see what I do as art? So, what that person does. That is an example of somebody attempting to remember something extremely fucked up. Right? So, the reality is that most of the time things, people that do art like that, a lot of times it's just really muddled and all shitty like this, right? Yeah. Here's an example of something that isn't that. Do you all see the difference? Right? So, let me just go through here. Here's an example of something that isn't that. Oh, those things have meaning, but it doesn't mean nothing bad. Not in my opinion. Here is an example of something that I made after I remembered a memory. See, when I burned down my house, I went into such a massive shock that I literally had amnesia of the whole event. And then I'll tell you what I was doing. I was trying to light the hurricane lamp, and it fell over, and these kind of, it has all the fuel and that it had lit already and stuff. And then I went into shock. And then I walked outside. And then my house burned down. Okay? And so this is where years and years later, I finally remembered the incident. All right? So here is an example of me doing a memory. Something based on a memory. That was a traumatic event for me. In that sense, prior to that, I had been put through moments that caused shock so much. I was put into shock, and that then everything that happened around that specific time frame, I had a very minimal memory of. Okay, insurance frauds. Oh, I know exactly. Okay. Okay, fucking cuck. So, what this means, people who suffer from an inside and outside dual personality and memory, a lot of times, when they do art, essentially, people that do bad art like this usually did something bad on purpose. See, the difference is that people that do Satanism, that suffer from those two personalities, part of what splits their personality is the event that they're trying to remember. Imagine like hanging somebody out of Toucan. See, whenever they do something bad, they also satanically sex slave them. Also, at the same time, they do something bad, like horrific, something horrific. And then they satanically sex slave them. And then that basically causes them to split personalities. It basically does. Okay? And so that's why I say that it's not all or nothing with this stuff. Some people might have stood there and seen it, basically, and that has a psychological output in those ways. Also, this right here, this is a fine piece of abstract art. And essentially, this in ways represents a memory that I'm still working with. Basically, it represents a very deep-seated memory. It's a bad one. You see how it's a black menorah and okay. It was something that I happened as a child. That's what this is about. Okay. But it also falls into my theoretics about like sequencing and nature and mathematics. Basically. And so this is essentially, but it does represent something from my childhood also. Here's an example of what happens when you piss off Satan. Right? This is an example that I didn't have anything to do with this, but I thought it was so fucking hilarious. And it has to do with somebody that I fucking hate. Okay? A Satanist. He essentially, these women, they get blackmailed and then they have to like be on their computer and then they have to answer with like a yes and a no, and then they usually have camera eyes or somebody's watching their computer from, and then they have to answer by just pressing Y or N. And that this person was going around forcing women to do that stuff. And then it ended up happening to him. And I thought that was hilarious because you know what? That person gets the taste of his own medicine. He really does. This right here will probably be interesting to a Lumen Corp. As a child, I was taught these things, right? By Satanists. Basically. This, in ways, represents memories that it's just like they would do the satanic sex slaving shit to me, and then when I was in shock, they would train these logic block ideas at me. That's why I understand them so much. No, that's the kind of shit. And when the old Mason guy was like, you should have to learn these dumb fucker fucks that they learned as a kid, is basically what the conversation was. And then it's like, I didn't ever do those because I fucking hate that stuff. But apparently they needed to understand that stuff a little bit more. This is a humorous second piece to another piece that I used to have that I don't even know where it is, where it was a broken record. This one is fixed. Alright. And so then this one is like kind of meant for my wife, my ex-wife, cause she's kind of got hips and no boobs. And I referred to her as the pear-shaped woman. Right? So that's kind of what that's about. So see, the reality is that a lot of these represent things. That's kind of what you're supposed to do in art. But see, people have a regurgitated 50 fuck about this stuff that revolves around this idea. See, a person that has two separate personalities that then goes home almost nightly and reproduces the same imagery or something over and over again, that person basically, at some point, that type of imagery, it reoccurs. See, a lot of times it's like, think about it as like a baby sitting right here and poking blood, like drawing blood off of your finger kind of stuff. That could mean that. It could. See, it could be more like this. See how it's like an altar? It could also be a cage doorway kind of way, okay? And so that's like in the TV show. That's basically what he was like drawing or something, or painting. And so that's what that stuff means. So sometimes I really wonder, why do people in the South voyeur stalk somebody? Because I really wonder sometimes, because, you know, when you guys semantically say that somebody's a schizo and a sick fucking shit, it's where I like to use these moments. Where people sit behind the scenes, having some sort of completely abstract version of psychology about everything. This is me demonstrating what the difference between art and what muddled memory of Satanists produce. And you see that in lots of ways, those people with those split personalities, they essentially are one personality. They're not woken up to what it is that they did. Basically. And so that is basically a lot of the times their whole mind becomes engulfed with trying to get the host, so to speak, to be remembering the sick fuck moment. And you see that it becomes an infatuation in ways for those people. And that is like when it comes to Picasso and shit like that, potentially he could have been like that also. But the whole idea is that the really shitty stuff is kind of what that is. And it's like there's a dark patch of memory that is so deep-seated, yet it defines everything about, like, essentially, paranoia has an output. If you go against the natural output of your psyche, it'll start to do weird shit like that. I mean, honestly, see, there's like, essentially, if you do something really fucked up, then you're supposed to be really fucking paranoid. I mean, and that you see how these people in this TV show, you see how they walk around and seemingly aren't paranoid whatsoever, that's where, deep down inside, the ones that do that type of bad Satanism shit are literally going against their own psyche. See, at some point, people that do bad things that produce art like this should probably be so fucking paranoid that they should probably run and hide. That's kind of what the psychological output of doing something that extreme, okay? And so that's what happens when they don't exhibit the normal kind of psychological output. It starts to twist their mind inside. See, they're supposed to flight. They're not supposed to be calm, cool, and collected. They're not supposed to be feeling paranoidless, basically. They're supposed to be really freaked out. And that if they're not acting like that, then inside their mind, it's slowly twisting. Slowly their mind will twist over time. It will. I've seen it. I've seen it. Their mind will slowly start to completely, the whole fuck switch and stuff. Usually they're still doing like S&Ms and shit. That makes it like that. But slowly their mind is building an altar, and that this type of shit is like, that type of shit is like psychologically outputting because internally their psyche, like, it's kind of like these hackers that like to do text psycho and reach out or whatever. That their internal psychology is trying to reach out. If they're a psycho, then it'll want it. The protection altar will want to switch and will want to push at everyone how much of a fucking psycho they are, or something like that. And then, or it'll be attempting to the subconscious aspects to that type of stuff. Essentially, if they're not exhibiting more paranoia and protectiveness to them, because in a way, the person knows but doesn't remember. But then the subconscious remembers and knows that that person is supposed to be freaking out and being super paranoid for its own protection. So this is kind of what, I mean, if you go against your mind, basically, if you go against your mind too much, it starts to twist in these ways.